IRC has a minimum of 10 inches where we have 9. And they still measure 10 inches out. But the IRC also has that winders have to have a minimum inside dimension of 6. We don't have any minimum inside, so it can come right to a point, still legal. Handrails or guardrails, that's pretty much the same. Handrail provided at 30 to 38 inches above the tread nosing meets the height requirements for a guard on a stairway. Open-sided stairways. The question always used to come up, is that rail going down the open side of the stairway, is it a handrail or a guardrail? There was so much controversy over that and so much confusion amongst inspectors, more so than builders, that they now put it in there that said the handrail providing 30 to 38 above the tread nosing meets the requirement of a guard. So it doesn't matter whether you call it a guardrail, a handrail, as long as it meets that requirement, you're still good to go. Yesterday when I was going through an issue, there was another notation. I don't think I incorporated it in here. Let's see. No, I didn't. Is there any time that you can think of where a handrail can be greater than 38 inches above the tread and still be legal? Think about it. If I'm changing direction on a stairway and I come onto a landing, and now I have basically a gooseneck going up to catch the next. And if this part of the handrail down here was 38 or 36, when I get to the top of that gooseneck, I'm more than 38. It actually is in the code that it allows that. Something after reading that thing hundreds, thousands of times, never realized it, but it's in there. So there is a provision for that. I remember a discussion at the Code Council about a builder that was complaining because he had a handrail that was 38.5 inches and he had to change it. They would have had to change it anyhow because it was not part of a gooseneck design or a volute or anything like that. So they didn't change any of the standard shapes or sizes. Basically, they actually incorporated them into the deck code. They did change the infamous less than 4-inch spindle spacing to 4 3/8 because the IRC has been 4 3/8. The 6-inch at that triangular shape on a stair stayed the same. Incidentally, I just noticed in the deck code, if we have an open riser on a deck code, on deck steps, it's limited to 4 inches, just as it is there. Where a lot of the spindle spacing on deck stairs is also 4. Why they didn't pick up 4 3/8 on all of them, but I discovered that one in the deck code too.
Why would we have done that? I mean, what difference does it make if the spacing on a guardrail or at the end? I don't know.
The argument was this: if you're building what I'll call a bare bones stair, where your nose to nose dimension is exactly 9 inches, and with some of these metal rail or metal spindles now, you would have to have 3 on a tread as opposed to 2. And so the IRC went ahead and said, you know, they did this 6 years ago. They went to 4 3/8. And so now we finally went to 4 3/8. So we're getting closer, but we're not the same. So I get lots of pictures sent to me. Here's one that a building inspector sent to me. He said, in your opinion, as a registered architect, is that a legal handrail? So let's see by a show of hands. Legal? Everybody's hand should have gone up. It is a legal handrail. It's ugly, meets the definition of good, bad, and ugly, but that particular, the builder and the building inspector were both being sued by the homeowner over this stairway. Now, do I need to say that the homeowner was a lawyer? He didn't like the way it looked. He wanted them to change it. And the basis was that it was not a legal handrail.
Well, was it part of the design?
It wasn't ever shown on the drawings. It just, you know,
Yeah.
showed a line for the handrail. They don't show elevations, so
What was on the other side, just a wall?
just a wall, just a wall. So, yeah, they needed a handrail there, but believe it or not, even with all the offsets and everything, it always met the criteria of the 30 to 38 and no more than the 8-inch risers, so he finally dropped the suit. So, winders, except as provided in 3B, required handrail and winder stairs shall be placed on the side where the treads are wider. And how do we measure winders? Everybody knows, right? Where do we measure regular treads? All across the tread, minimum 9 nose to nose, not riser to nose. With winders, it's not uniform, so it's 12 inches out. So nose to nose. What do you think? Winder? Curved? Radius? The only thing that the UDC defines is winders and straight staircases. So this is considered a winder. So as long as all of these treads 12 inches out from this narrow end was at least 9, it's good to go. Where we run into problems with this kind of a stairway is tread and riser 1, 2, and 3. Because even though it's semi-uniform in shape, it's not uniform. It's not the same as all the other treads and risers. So technically it's not legal. The other thing is that for that single winder, we have to be 9 at 12. For winders within a run, what is it? 7.5 at 12. So this was one that a builder that's a member of WBA had a problem with a design and a building that they did. The entire stairway is made up of winders. And his argument was that he had 7.5 inches, so he should be good all the way up. But there's a provision in there that says the top and bottom has to be 9 at 12 inches out, and it has to be uniform, so all of them ended up being 9. Well, that would have been an option, but the easy solution that I gave him is that the only handrail was on the narrow side. If you add a handrail, even one of those El Cheapo round handrails on this side, all of a sudden you're code compliant. So, if you're wondering why did I get involved in this, because if you send in a code question to WBA in Madison into their code hotline, I answer it. So I said, too bad, so sad, add a rail. Life's good, and we all know what happened after occupancy. This is pretty much the same. The difference is that on guards now, it's still 200 pounds applied in any direction on the handrail itself or guard, and that filler panels, 50 pounds over 1 square foot. That's not really a change. The change was that it used to apply just to handrails. Now it says handrails or guards.
I've got a question. In the code for the decks, it tells you that the newels can be no more than 6 feet apart.
Right.
But on a regular stairway or a guard, like say over a loft, I didn't find anything in there other than that 200-pound load thing. So it doesn't give you how far your newels could be apart as long as 200 pounds, right?
Right, right.
Like, no, it just seems like that's, because we just had a question on that with one. It was a balcony or almost like a catwalk. They went from one side of the house to the other side of the house on a second story. And I think that we had them 8.5 feet apart or something like that. And they finally okayed it, but.
If you, I'll do a little drawing.
When the question came up, I asked them what part of the code you want us to meet.
Yeah.
And they couldn't come up with it. He gave them that one. I said, well, it's, you know,
Yeah,
I weigh 240. If I hang up against it and it doesn't, I don't end up on the first floor, I guess it's good to go, right?
right. Well, the big thing is the fact that on deck, if a guard is required, we already know that it's more than 2 feet above grade.
Okay.
Okay? And when you do the math, that's where the 6 foot comes from. Okay? There are ways around that, but you can't use this part of the code for the deck guardrail, which was one of my arguments. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you keep it consistent?
And the other question would be, now, when they want the cable that goes between them, that, again, on that, it shows that it has to have a stay or a newel or whatever you want to call it, no more than 4 feet apart.
Right.
And that would be the same requirement on a guardrail in the interior of a house too, then, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay,
Yeah, on a guardrail, it does have the same requirement.
okay.
And you notice that now they put in there that those cables have to have the maximum spread at 4 pounds when applied to it. Well, 4 pounds isn't very much, you know? So I have seen some of those cable rails, especially the 42-inch high ones, that you can open them more than the 3.5 that they're allowed. So, and it depends how long they've been there too, believe it or not. So, yeah, there's your 4 feet kind of thing. Glazing used, that's always been there. And like your point, it doesn't say that you gotta have post every so many feet on glazing. It's whatever meets the requirement. The interesting thing about glazing infill, and it's not in the code, when you use glazing on a stairway, the code doesn't have priority. The federal government has priority on it because it's a glass guardrail. And what their standard says is whatever the code requires for pressure on that, it's 4 times. So since we have 50 pounds, what does that panel have to resist? 200. So that other part of the code for standard guards and handrails doesn't apply there either.
Just before, I just noticed that in that deck code now, we used to be able to notch a 4x4 post and put it up against, you can't do that now, according to what I saw, the 4x4's gotta be a full 4x4.
Correct.
And is that the same with, say, on the interior stairway, because a lot of times we've done with that just to take a, to put it up against the rim joist or whatever you wanna call it on a balcony or whatever.
It's not on the inside like that. And again, it's because of the height elevation, It's not, the big deal with the notching of posts on decks is because number one, and 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be southern yellow pine. It's not gonna have the horizontal shear capacity that you would have on Doug fir, for example, or something else. And the other side of that is when you notch it, you're going parallel to the grain, and you greatly reduce your strength by about 50% of what that post is.
So you'd be better off getting those connectors that fit on the inside of the joist, rim joist, and your post can slide right into there and it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the best solution to it. I had one that, since we're talking about decks and posts, now if you have a wood post supporting a deck, it has to be notched to accept a beam, or it has to have a bracket on the top, okay? Well, somebody said to me, well, what if I want to take my 6x6 post, notch it to accept the beam, and carry it 3 feet above the deck? Can I do that? Technically, no, because now that post supporting the deck becomes a newel. Does it make sense? Not on a 6x6. 4x4, yes.